My major was in sociology, and I have a minor in women's studies, which would be gender studies now, and political science, but on the paper it says gender studies. And that had a huge influence on my life. I work as a family law mediator and a psychotherapist. I work mostly in divorce, and for a long time I worked only in that field, but now I also do couple counseling, so keeping people together as well as supporting people who are divorcing. A week at work for me, I see people in couples or individuals, and a lot of my work is I decide or work with people, particularly people who are fighting over the custody of children. And I work to support families to get out of conflict and help them develop parenting plans. But I also work with couples who are trying to stay together, and I also work with individuals who have been devastated by the impact of divorce. I think the thing about my career that I enjoy the most is really assisting people to get out of conflict. And I feel really high when I get people to resolve conflicts. I don't know what that says about my childhood, but I really enjoy that. And I find, I think that my job as a psychotherapist and a counselor is really to care for people. And I think that's the thing that really heals people more than anything, is feeling unconditional positive regard, as we say. But just, I'm actually paid to love people, as hokey as that sounds. So I have a really interesting background in terms of, I was a feminist activist with a national women's organization that doesn't exist anymore, the National Action Committee on the Status of Women. And it really came from the work that I did at Memorial with two fabulous women, Roberta Buchanan and Joan Scott, who were feminist activists and women's studies professors here. I worked at Iris Kirby House as a counselor out of school, and it was a different time when you could get a job with a BA in a women's organization. Now it's more credentialed, and I have a MSW from the University of Toronto, but I worked for women's organizations. And then from that, I got a job one summer as a child welfare assistant at the Children's Aid Society in Toronto. And from that, I met fabulous people who were working in high conflict custody and access disputes, and met a woman who was a family law mediator. And I thought, how do I become this woman? And that's how I started on the path to being a family law mediator and psychotherapist. I think my BA really set me up in a really good way for the work that I do. I think being in the BA program exposed me to so much broader education in terms of political theories or sociological theories, or certainly the foundations for racism and oppression in our culture, that is really, really significant for the work that I do. And I often think of the most useful courses that I took. And in general, I think in terms of broader education, I've often felt that my knowledge of like sociological theory has been really of great benefit to inform the work that I do. I think that finding what you're passionate about, and the BA program gives you a chance to be exposed to so many areas and issues. The other thing that I encourage people to do is to volunteer in an area that you're interested in. And always in my life, I have always gotten jobs there through people knowing me. And also making connections at MUN. I think that there's so many people who are involved in so many different projects here, but rooting it in something that gives you energy and something you want to do is so important. I think the biggest thing is finding out in your networks who can help you find jobs, and connecting with people in areas that you're drawn to, and basing it on some of the things that you were interested in your work at MUN. So research, or areas, who are the writers that you were reading about, and where are they, and what are they doing, and making connections. But I've always been hired by people who heard of me through someone who knew me. So I feel that the most significant part of my BA that was useful to me was the Gender Studies, Women's Studies program. And I have been so active on boards and organizations for so many years, based and rooted on the education that I was given at Memorial in that area. And it's really very important that we be committed to broader liberal education. And as we become more professionalized mills in terms of producing only professionals, something is really lost in terms of research and just a broader sense of knowledge than just professional schools provide. So the thing about my career that I find really fun and interesting is because I live in Toronto, I work with a lot of celebrities and people, I always call it inside baseball. So people in the entertainment business, writers, TV writers, producers, and that makes my job very, very enjoyable. Often, because of the work that I do, these people come to me because they're involved with divorces, and often it involves infidelity or whatever word we want to use. But then I become really immersed into their world, and so it's interesting. No matter what area that I work with someone, I'll often have them refer people from their industry. And so I have this really interesting like inside look at other areas. So like I said, the entertainment business or IT. And I have a lot of people that I work with that I call unicorns that do really interesting work. And that brings so much to my life to have the inside track on so many interesting things. I think the thing for me, I am a very calm person when I'm around people who are angry. So other people being angry makes me calm. And I think having a deep knowledge of what might be driving conflict, and that's why I talk about having the skills that came to me through BA, just psychology courses, sociology courses, understanding where people are standing on different places on the earth, like in terms of race and class and sexual orientation. And those are really important aspects to be looking at a lens of reducing conflict between people. I think working in alternative dispute resolution, so helping people get out of conflict, and it can be in a corporate setting. I'm not drawn to that, but I have many colleagues who are drawn to that. It can be as simple as working within condo boards where there are conflict, but just helping people, assisting them to reduce conflict and understanding what is driving conflict. And most people who are in really big conflicts, someone is really anxious, really terrified of something happening and trying to get that out. What are the people who have the stakes so high worried about, and coming to the end of that. So I was so fortunate in terms of the pandemic. Within a week, I had transitioned to Zoom. So my career didn't stop with the pandemic. And in fact, I'm so fortunate. I now split my time between Blackhead, Newfoundland, Toronto, and Mexico because I only work on Zoom. And I knew people who did this years ago when I was doing couples training, but they were mostly very high-end people who worked with couples who were extremely wealthy from like Dubai or wherever. And but for me to be now, I am only on Zoom. I love that because I can live wherever I want. The future for me, I think, what relates to my early life here is really working to support queer and trans youth in Newfoundland. So I've been very involved with the national gay and lesbian organization called the GAL, and to just have more supports here for transitioning youth, homeless queer youth, and just making it by our mere presence and comfort, there being professional out queer people. I think that's really important for people to see.